China and the economy. Joining us, Curtis Ellis, former trade advisor to the Trump campaign. You know, a lot of people are saying this news is, Curtis, this news, which has our markets down 300 points a Dow, is still good news with respect to our negotiating position with China. How do you see it?
Absolutely. Look, China is more dependent on exports than we are dependent on their imports. Their economy is slowing down. According to some insider information, it's only grown at perhaps 1%, maybe even less. They're on the verge of contracting. This destabilizes their economy. It destabilizes even Xi Jinping's hold on power. There is now growing public grumbling about how he's been handling all this.
I will say, you know, just looking at the media over there, you know, China Daily, South China Morning Post, you go to the ministry's website, and then this meeting with the Politburo last week, where the tone was 180% the change, right? The bombastic, you know, cocky arrogance that you saw at the beginning of 2018, completely gone, suggests that they realize that it might be wise to just come up with some sort of a deal.
That's right. And maybe they're beginning to realize that having Democrats newly ascendant in power is not going to help them. The Democrats, like even Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Senator Sherrod Brown from Ohio, have been very outspoken about being tough on China, and they're probably going to push President Trump to be even tougher. Should he come to an agreement which is not sufficiently tough, they'll be criticizing him from the right.
Because there was some speculation China would sort of wait out President Trump in 2018, wait for the midterms. Now, maybe if he lost the Senate, perhaps that would embolden China. But to your point, that's not going to work for them now. So what about their business allies? Because when this whole thing began, you know, the conservative economic orthodoxy was up in arms. They had pitchforks and they had torches, and they said this never works. Of course, they could never explain how China became the second most biggest economy in the world with the highest tariffs in the world. I never knew how that worked. It worked pretty good for them for about 30 years. But you know, their allies seem to be fading. Even Wall Street, which has sort of been rooting for China, at least in the early stage of this, they're not as vocal anymore about wanting Trump to lose.
That's right. Perhaps they're beginning to realize that if the jobs come back to America and we start making things here again, wages will rise and we will have our own domestic market back again instead of giving it away to a foreign power.
Do you think traditional economic thinking, you know, the post-Adam Smith thinking, could change a little bit with the idea that ultimately, it's not about cheap goods to consumers, but maybe consumers having jobs initially, you know, maybe the dynamic, because really jobs never were talked about. It was always about lowest costs, and they talk about supply chains, and they talk about, you know, the advantages and things like that. But ultimately, in the world of economics, could there be a change in thinking?
Well, yes. We're talking. What you're talking about is what President Lincoln's economic advisor talked about. The goal is to raise wages. It's not to lower cheaper prices. It's raise wages. As someone once said to me, I don't care how cheap those boots are. If I don't have a job, I can't afford them, right? So we want to raise wages. We want to have people making things. You have to be a producer before you can be a consumer. Pull the tapes from CNBC in 2000 or the late 90s. Every time a company laid off a bunch of workers, their stock price would go up because of this short-term thinking. Well, our labor costs are decreased. You've also killed your consumers, too.
Yeah, yeah. I think corporate America, if they're not coming around to that, they may be forced to politically if they don't figure it all out. Before I let you go, then, the odds on something really good happening before this new March deadline.
50-50.
Really, still?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, is that an improvement?
I'd say it's about the same.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. Curtis, you're one of the best, and we appreciate you coming in.
Oh,
Happy
thank
New
you.
Year.
Happy New Year.
Thanks a lot. All right, let's check on the